Good morning, friends and fellow artists. I'm coming to you today with a new series. This series is going to be on art journaling. For as long as I've been painting, my painting has been, for the most part, representational, and I think probably a little too rigid sometimes. I've tried every medium. I've tried different styles, and I've been able to do some abstract painting, which I did during the church service when I lived in or near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was able to get a little bit more loose, a little bit more abstract. And not that I think tight paintings are necessarily bad, because they're not, but I have wanted to become a little more loose, and I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos where artists are explaining art journaling and they're demonstrating them, and I found a couple of artists that I want to borrow their techniques. So today I'm going to tell you what I've been about recently, and then I'm going to do some pen and ink over this particular watercolor sketch. I bought this little sketchbook thinking I was just going to discipline myself to do just that, some watercolor sketching. And all things considered, that hasn't really been a great experience for me, but in each of the watercolor sketches that I did, I ultimately did a painting of them. So that was my reasoning behind doing the sketchbook. And all things considered, I think they came out pretty good. Sorry, gotta get you situated here. But I'm going to show you some of the things that I did in the way of sketches, and then I applied the pen and ink to them. And this is one that I did for a painting from a trip to Gatlinburg. And I just came back actually from Gatlinburg, and while I was in Gatlinburg, I took my sketchbook with me, and I decided to go over these paintings with the pen, and this is the result. And this is one, the composition for this very loose painting is Dreama Toll Perry, with whom I have taken an online course with, and so I give her credit for the composition. But this is done in watercolor, and I've gone over it with the pen to sort of reclaim it, I guess you could say. And you notice that one. This is another painting that I did a while back, just playing around with the watercolors, and I decided I'm not going to lose anything if I mess it up. So I took my little pen and worked on it as well. On a previous trip, when I went with friends to the beach, I decided to take my little notebook with me, sketchbook, and I decided to try the technique that I have seen art journalists do by just dropping some color in and then taking the pen and sort of creating the design on top of the colors and the way they ran together. And this was my first attempt on that, and I cut it and glued it to this greeting card stock, which I'm going to do some calligraphy in here. And that was my first one, and this was my second. And in this case, I glued this down with some Elmer's glue, and I discovered right away, because my sketchbook paper is 140-pound watercolor paper and my greeting card is 65-pound, so those two things didn't work very well together with the Elmer's glue. So I'm just experimenting and working on what to do with my materials, and so that was my second one. And my third one is right here, and this one is, I think, more colorful and more pleasant. But there's some things I don't like about it, which I would have changed, but you don't always get exactly what you think you want when you're doing this kind of loose watercolor with pen over. So today I'm going to be about the business of covering the painting I mentioned earlier. This was a watercolor sketch I did previous to doing the painting in oils. So I'm going to jump in here with my pen and ink and see what I can do with this. And just hang in there with me. I'll be right back as soon as I get all my equipment together. I'll just mention that I found this great little, I'm calling it a pencil case for lack of a better name, but just a wonderful thing at the thrift shop for $2. And I'm just really excited about it because it holds everything except my sketchbook. It holds all my pens and my little pencil sharpener, my 4B pencil. I don't usually make many pencil sketches with these. I have a little white gel pen that was recommended to me from one of my YouTube finds, and these are graphic pens, and I'm not even sure who makes them. Doesn't say, but various sizes. And I use this watercolor brush, which is a reservoir pen, and it's easy to carry, and I can do almost anything with this one pen. Excuse me. And it also gives me some water, so when I'm painting on location, I don't have to carry a big container of water. And then my little watercolor container here fits right in this same little travel case. So that's what I'm going to be using. I am also going to spend some time using these little glitter or metallic paints that I found. They have a brand name on the back, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. Yasutomo, evidently Oriental, but I've used them before, and they're okay. They're not expensive, by the way, so that may account for the fact that they're not exceptional. And I recommend to my senior writing class that they do some of these art journaling sketches, and I found these watercolor paints quite inexpensively. This is a low Cornell, and this one is actually also low Cornell, but you know, they're just cheap little watercolor pads, and I'm sure I bought these when my granddaughter was coming to visit and wanted to paint. So I'll be back in a moment as soon as I get set up. Okay, I'm going to be using the .5 pen today because my colors are dark in some areas, and I found, excuse me, this is not my 0.5, that's why I couldn't find it on the pen. Okay, I'm ready to get started. I'm going to be using my 0.5 graphic pen for this one, partly because I have some really dark areas, and the finer points are just not going to show up on this. So, and I'm going to speed this up. Actually, I think on some of these distant trees, I'm going to use a lighter weight, smaller size, just to make allowances for the fact that they are in the distance. As you can see, I'm certainly not trying to be regular, but I do want to be interesting. Some of the way distant trees, I'm doing even some broken lines. The pen marks are following somewhat the brush marks. They've created for me a situation where I don't have a pattern. Some places patterns are good, but in this particular aspect, I think not so good. One thing I discovered when I was in the mountains doodling over my watercolor sketches is I don't think about much of anything when I'm doing this. And I'm not necessarily concentrating on what I'm doing either. So I think it's an awesome experience to help you free your mind of clutter, if just temporary. And I'm using just sort of a light touch here. Well, as you can see, I have lifted some of this color in here, and I'm going to have to let that dry a little bit. I'm going to go over it with a little bit of green, I think, to make it a little more realistic. As you probably know, doing sketch painting doesn't have to be perfect by any means, but for this exercise I decided I needed to do a little work on that before I start working in the pen. So I'll be back shortly when this is dry, and we'll see where we go from here. As you can see, I decided I'd better go ahead and put some of this stuff in while it was wet. Then I won't have to wait another period of time. I can't recall whether this is sap green or Cooper's green. I think it's sap green. These trees were also not shaped very well. Okay, at least they won't look so blue. Blue's not a bad thing when you're trying to achieve distance in your shadow area, but I think I overdid it with the blue. Drop a little bit of this yellow in there. Give me some sense highlight. The green is wet. This is looking a little better. Much better. nice thing about these pens is that they are waterproof, water resistant, and they're archival. So it's all good. So I don't have to worry about going over the pen marks with my watercolor because it's not going to affect them. This addition of the pen marks is going to give me a good reason to do more watercolor sketching, if for no other reason but to get prepared for my painting in oils. And then I have the added benefit of being able to make maybe some greeting cards or just some little 5x7 prints. But it's all good because it keeps me moving in a positive direction, and I never feel like I'm wasting time when I'm doing this. That is, when I'm doing art. I wrote a book which is more about, I think, the philosophy and the aesthetics of art, called Art, the Language of the Soul. And it's available on Amazon in ebook and soft paperback. Okay, well, I'm going to stop now until this gets completely dry, and I'll be back. Okay, folks, I think I'm finished here, and let me bring you in a little bit closer. So I'm going to get you centered here. I'm actually quite satisfied with the end result, and I'm certainly going to be doing more of these, and I wish you well. If you're just attempting these kinds of things, just go for it. It's only paper, it's only paint, and really not that expensive, especially with watercolor because you can use them for a very long time. And I hope that you will enjoy it, but I also hope that you will like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thanks again for watching. I'll be back soon.